Close your eyes and imagine the most profound silence you've ever experienced. Now, multiply that by infinity. Imagine being entirely alone in the freezing, absolute void of the cosmos. You are sitting in a tiny, fragile metal capsule, drifting 240,000 miles away from every heartbeat, every warm conversation, and every single breath on Earth. Below you, the moon looms like a giant, dead skull. This was the haunting reality for Michael Collins on July 20th, 1969. While the world celebrated Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, Collins was orbiting in the shadows, carrying a secret that could have changed history forever. In his flight suit pocket, he carried a document that wasn't meant for the history books. It was a top-secret contingency plan titled "In Event of Moon Disaster." It was a speech written for President Richard Nixon to read to a mourning global audience if the lunar module failed to ignite. The orders were cold and clear. If Armstrong and Aldrin were stranded on the surface, Michael Collins was to leave them there. He would have to fire his engines, turn his back on his brothers, and return to Earth as the only survivor of humanity's greatest gamble. This is the raw, terrifying, and glitch-filled truth of how America almost lost its soul on the lunar surface. This isn't the heroic, sanitized version you were taught in school. This was a high-stakes game of survival. To understand why the United States poured over $25 billion, more than $250 billion in today's currency, into a giant gray rock, you have to understand the toxic, paranoid atmosphere of the 1960s. America was bleeding from the inside out. The streets were choked with protests, the Vietnam War was tearing families apart, and our greatest geopolitical enemy, the Soviet Union, was winning the battle for the heavens. They had the first satellite, the first living creature in space, and the first human orbit. America was desperate, and President John F. Kennedy's promise to land a man on the moon was a massive, desperate Hail Mary for national survival. But back in 1961, the technology simply didn't exist. We didn't have computers that could fit on a desk, let alone inside a spacecraft. Our rockets were exploding on the launch pads like oversized, expensive firecrackers. The dream was beautiful, but the engineering was borderline suicidal. Every time an astronaut sat on top of those early rockets, they were essentially sitting on a controlled nuclear explosion with a 50-50 chance of survival. The cost of this ambition was paid in blood. In January 1967, during a routine ground test for Apollo 1, a single stray spark ignited a flash fire inside the pure oxygen cabin. Within seconds, astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee were trapped in an inferno. Because the hatch opened inward, the pressure from the fire sealed them inside their own coffin. Their final screams were recorded on tape, a haunting reminder of the price of progress. NASA almost collapsed, but they rebuilt with a frantic, obsessive energy that finally led to Apollo 11. On July 16, 1969, the Saturn V rocket stood as a 360-foot-tall skyscraper of explosive kerosene and liquid oxygen. When it ignited, it released more energy than all the bombs dropped in World War II combined. The three men strapped into the tip of that needle, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, were crushed by 6 times the force of gravity as they were catapulted into the blackness at 25,000 miles per hour. For 3 long days, they lived in a space no bigger than a walk-in closet, watching the Earth shrink until it was nothing but a fragile blue marble suspended in a sea of absolute darkness. The psychological toll was immense, the terrifying realization that you are further from home than any living creature has ever been in the history of time. But the real nightmare began during the descent to the lunar surface. As the lunar module, the Eagle, dropped toward the dust, chaos erupted inside the cockpit. At 5,000 feet, a yellow alarm light began to flash rhythmically. 1202, 1202. It was a computer overload. The onboard computer, with less power than a modern digital watch, was crashing under the data pressure. Neil Armstrong looked out the small triangular window and realized the autopilot was heading straight for a boulder-strewn crater that would have snapped the landing legs like twigs. Neil did the unthinkable. He took manual control, skimming the surface like a fighter pilot in a low-altitude dogfight. Back in Houston, the fuel gauges were dropping into the red. 60 seconds, the radio crackled. 30 seconds. Dust was flying everywhere, blinding the sensors. Finally, through the static, the voice that changed history. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. The euphoria was short-lived. After the magnificent desolation of the walk, the astronauts returned to the Eagle, only to find a tiny piece of black plastic on the floor. It was the head of the circuit breaker switch for the ascent engine, the only engine that could lift them off the moon. One of them had snapped it off with their bulky backpack. They were effectively trapped. No spare parts, no rescue mission. In that moment of cold terror, Buzz Aldrin took a simple felt-tip pen from his pocket, jammed it into the broken hole, and pushed. It clicked. That simple pen saved their lives. Without it, they would be two frozen statues on the moon today. The return trip was another series of narrow escapes, followed by a 3-week quarantine because scientists feared moon germs could cause a global plague. By 1972, the fascination died, and the moon fell silent for 50 years. But now, the race has rebooted with the Artemis program. We are going back to stay, building bases, and preparing for the ultimate jump to Mars. As we look back at Apollo 11, we see more than science. We see a moment when humanity was pushed to the absolute edge. They didn't have advanced AI, they had raw courage and a felt-tip pen. We are going back because staying on one planet is a risk we can no longer afford to take. The void is waiting. Are we ready to face it again?